Real Magada Kahirle, and Minister, as you know, I'm following this up for some time, community-led small-scale renewable projects. So specifically then, that mouthful, I'm asking you to give us an update on the tariff, the date on which the export tariff phase of the small-scale renewable energy support scheme, which will, that's a mouthful, we might come back to the language being used here, will be launched, and the status of the work by the economic consultants for his department regarding the revision of the levelised cost of energy estimates. I'll come back to the language in a minute. Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy. Through the first two renewable electricity support scheme auctions, my department provided pathways and support for communities to participate in renewable energy projects through the application of a community projects category. However, in the future, support for communities for the development of renewable projects will now transition to the small-scale renewable electricity support scheme. SRES will not be auction-based, rather it is anticipated that support for export projects will be through an export tariff. The export tariff phase of the SRES, which will support small-scale and community renewable projects, is expected to launch within the coming short number of weeks in the second quarter this year. SRES will offer a simpler route to market for community renewable projects, aligning more closely to their experience and capacity. In order to reflect up-to-date trends in input pricing and financing costs for renewable energy technologies, an updated analysis of the levelised cost of energy estimates required for small-scale and community-based generation has been undertaken by economic consultants in order to inform the tariff-setting process for the SRES. My department is currently reviewing this analysis to inform the final scheme design and tariff levels, as well as an assessment of consumer impacts.
You know this language that we're using, and I'm on your side in relation to this, and I don't know how I could explain to anyone the export tariff phase of the SRESS. We're talking about community-led renewable projects, either solar or wind, and you might clarify, talking about here, is it just solar now in this new phase of involving the community? The previous two involvements involved an auction base, and I appreciate that that's now changed. I welcome that. They should have never been in that auction phase. But of the 7 community projects in the first phase, only 4 remained, and they were due to energise in 2023. I don't know whether they have or not. In the second round, the 8 community projects that were successful, they were to energise by 2025. They included solar and wind. Will they energise? Will they be on time in 2025? And then we move forward because you felt it was right. And I happen to agree with your decision, but you haven't given me no analysis. I can't learn what were the problems in the previous ones and what are the improvements in this one. And how can I lead or how can I be part of a project on the ground? In my community, for example, in the Claddagh, I'll finish on time and come back.
As happens, as I said, I had a meeting yesterday with a variety of community energy organisations, and the first thing in the meeting, discussion we had yesterday, there's a clear recognition it has not built up as fast in anywhere near the scale and the speed and the diversity that we would want, and we will have to continue to make sure that it does and start to revise whatever programmes we have in place. My understanding, 3 or 4 possibly of those first projects that went through the renewable support scheme will be energised, but they've had real difficulties. And of the 8, as you said, in the second RES auction, we expect that they will be delivered, but that's not certain. The difficulties have typically revolved around grid connection and the cost of grid connection, the difficulty around planning I mentioned earlier on and the timelines involved in that. But also there's a difficulty in terms of the speed with which community groups are able to respond. Often, in many instances, a developer can make a quick decision, whereas a community group, by the nature of the kind of inclusive process, it takes longer. The state has recognised that. We revised our approach by giving direct grant supports to community groups to help them SEAI administer it. We agreed yesterday that we need to be more ambitious in how they're deployed, not being afraid to make some risk investments where we provide grant support and a project doesn't actually develop and doesn't happen. That's part of what we need to do to help make it happen. But we're also with a very good meeting as part of this meeting yesterday with our regulator and with our grid companies, because they too have a role in making sure that we overcome the grid hurdles which are probably the key reason that we haven't seen the scale of community renewables that we want to see.
Minister.
Just, you know, the language, can we sell this to the community? I believe the community have been ahead of us the whole way. And you know, from my experience in Galway, they led the zero waste. They absolutely led. We don't get governments to lead. The community are crying out to lead. What they need is support. The language is awful. I don't know what it means, and I can't explain it. The tariff. You'll have to explain it in plain English for me. Secondly, we still don't know the 4 will be energised. They were supposed to be energised before the end of 23. We don't know whether they have, and we don't know whether the others will. This is positive. This is very good theoretically, but I would really love to see it set out in a document, in a digest, if the library even did it under your instructions, to explain what is going on here, what percentage of the projects are community-led, what are the difficulties, why can't the grid connection be sorted out, what are the guidelines, when will the new scheme be up and running, and what are the guidelines, so that I can work with you, work with my community, and look at Galway City and pick out each community that are self-contained. Clada, Shantla, Bohernathraw. I can pick out any of them. I'll finish.
Firstly, part of the work the SEI is doing is providing exactly that sort of information. So I will direct you and I will send you some of the material that they've presented, which is very...
Department, and I've been asking it for ages.
Well, SEI is an agency of our department, and we've asked them, because they are best placed. They run the Sustainable Energy Community Scheme. We had a very good meeting, as I said yesterday, and that immediate connection between the community developers and SEI is really important. But they have presented a lot of very practical, very easy to digest information, and that is, my mind, is key part of how we do make this work. The new renewable scheme will be available within the coming weeks, in a short number of weeks. And it will be very significant because it will provide a guaranteed price and not have community groups or others have to go through a complex auction process that is intimidating and can be very hard to negotiate if you're not fully versed and have all the experience and background in developing projects. By being up to 5 megawatts in scale, my expectation is will be particularly strong for solar solutions, because in truth, a lot of the smaller scale wind projects are not as economic as the larger projects. It's the nature of wind farms or wind power has changed, where scale does matter in terms of lowering cost. But solar less so. And I think what's going to be critical as well is for us to be able to integrate and manage, come back to what the earlier discussion we had in an earlier question, this balancing system we have, to make really efficient use of the existing grid system we have, where ESB, in my mind, listening to them recently, are showing real new innovative flexibility in terms of how we use the existing grid. In many cases, the real cost and the real impediment to developing community energy is the cost of the transformer in the station, or building up the capacity of the grid to be able to take that. By their new innovative approach, where they're looking at how you can use flexibility within the grid and in hybrid connections and other such measures, that I think could, as well as the SRES, be a game changer to allow community energy to flourish.